You're listening to The Creative Imposter, episode 119. Welcome to The Creative Imposter. I'm Andrea Klunder, and this is our final episode in the travel series, but it's so much more than that because it's also the first episode in our Not Your Typical Self-Care series, because our guest, Shannon Harris, is someone who I admire in both the world culture and healing arts contexts, and music too. This is basically an episode of all my favorite things rolled into one. So let me tell you about the first time I discovered Shannon Harris. I was attending a kirtan at a yoga studio. I think it was Yoga Now in downtown Chicago. Maybe it was the Bodhi Center. In any case, what the heck is a kirtan? Well, you may have to go way back to an early episode of The Creative Imposter, actually episode 10, with Ellen Radha Katz, to learn more about kirtan. But basically, it's a band of musicians accompanying a singer who chants sacred mantras, mostly from Hindu traditions, hence the yoga connection, set to beautiful melodies, and the audience then learns the mantras and sings them back for an immersive, interactive, musical, vibrational, energetically healing experience. Well, one day, Shannon was there as part of the band, sort of sitting off to the side. He was not the main drummer holding down the steady beat, but he had this whole array of odd, interesting percussion instruments around his feet and an electronic soundboard of some kind, probably not the technical name for it, with which he was layering in all these textures and moods. And well, as someone who is usually completely fixated on vocals, as a vocalist myself, I was enraptured by what he was creating over there on the corner of that stage. Fast forward to years and years later, this moment, and we are talking about the evolution of his work to incorporate healing arts like Qigong and meditation with sound into a method called audio pharmacology. And his latest collaboration, Afrofutrinity, Quantum Cosmic Futures, which launches a new episode every third Thursday on SoundCloud. The next ones coming up are December 17th, 2020 and January 14th, 2021, episodes 7 and 8. So you are going to have to catch up on the previous episodes of Afrofutrinity. Now, if that sounds like a lot of mystical sounding words that may transport you magically to alternate realities, then yes, you are probably right. And also, Shannon's going to break it down for you in this episode to make it accessible without losing that touch of the mystical. We'll be linking to all of the things that we're talking about in the show notes at thecreativeimposter.com/119, which you can easily navigate to from the episode description in your app. And there, in the show notes, you will also find the Creative Imposter Collective on Mighty Networks. This year is ending, and we are ready to say farewell and F you to that which isn't serving us in an online celebration January 1st, New Year's Day, because really, where else have we got to go? And you are invited. Part of what we are saying goodbye to is our Facebook group and our meetup group. My team has been working behind the scenes to build a better, more expansive, more private space where we can gather to celebrate our creative wins and safely vent our gripes, where we can share our creative works in process and showcase the results. Mostly a space that over time facilitates friendships even when we can't be face to face in a physical room. It is free to join, and honestly, I feel like this is a breath of fresh air every time I log into the Mighty Network and see something a member has posted. The link to join us is at thecreativeimposter.com/community. I'm loving this platform so much that I've decided to become an affiliate, meaning that if you use the Mighty Network's link in the show notes to create your own group, or maybe transition your existing Facebook group off that hateful platform, Mighty Networks will send the Creative Imposter a monetary thank you for the referral. One more invitation before we get to Shannon. If you happen to also be a podcaster with at least 6 months of show making experience who wants to reach for the stars with your show in 2021, if you're tired of feeling isolated as a show creator and you could really use some support, some fresh ideas, a new approach, a sounding board for the thoughts that are rattling around in your head about your show, the Podcast Envy Pro Pod is for you. I'm accepting applications right now. I have extended the original deadline, lucky for you, for the first cohort, which begins in January. You can learn more and apply or book a quick call with me to discuss at thecreativeimposter.com/podcast envy pro. This founding cohort will meet monthly via Zoom. Each session will spotlight one member with a question around their show for us to discuss. Every 6 months, you'll get a deep dive one-on-one coaching with me. Membership also includes other perks like show features on Podcast Envy, access to my craft and culture behind the scenes podcast, and an exclusive online hub on Mighty Networks for quick questions and resources from the community. See, I told you, I love Mighty Networks. The Podcast Envy Pro Pod and the Creative Imposter Collective are linked, you know where, in the show notes. And now I am beyond happy to take you into this interview with some music written, produced, and used with permission by Shannon Harris.
If you really wanna know, just close your eyes and let it flow with me. I don't mind. If you really wanna know, just close your eyes and let it flow with me. I don't mind. If you really
So I was brainstorming a list of people who are doing different types of creative things, specifically things that are a little bit outside the box, so to speak, who also have some connection to travel. And you popped into my mind because I know that you have a pan-global, multicultural influence in the work that you do. So first of all, I would love for you to share this phrase, this term that you've actually trademarked, audio pharmacology. How on earth do you describe this to people?
I would like to think of audio pharmacology as a sound science with intentional and strategic implementation protocols. I know that sounds, out there, but I'll get into what that means. Okay, so we often look at sound as a entertainment medium without benefits outside of the emotions it instills. Feeling good is one of the most important things about sound, but it's a small part where there's physics behind the healing arts of it and the science of sound. So audio pharmacology is a music therapy that induces and ignites functional healing responses. So I like to use sound therapy functionally versus emotionally. I'm sticking to frequencies that associate with particular organs, energies, brainwave states, chakras, muscles, tissue, DNA, and etc. It's sort of like using frequency as a pharmacy. So that's how I like to explain it. I hope I did a good job.
You did. And is this something that you have created by compiling different experiences and different healing practices and also your knowledge of music and sound? Like, where did this theory come from?
Well, it started years ago as a DJ and then turning from a DJ into a musician and a producer and a composer. So I would notice when I would use certain frequencies and certain songs that had particular chords and notes in them, and as I would tweak them, it will cause people to respond a certain way. And everyone would kind of respond identically, very close to the same response. So when I begin to compose music, I love kind of the theta wave type of instruments, so the piano and strings and things like that. And when I began to write my albums and my compositions, everyone would say, your albums have a particular vibe about them, even how I recorded them in the way I would record the room with the music. And instead of going like a DI box direct in, I would always kind of mix the two where I capture kind of the ambiance and energy. So I won a music 101 class because I'm not trained in music. So through, I think it was Trinidadian jazz performance at Old Town School of Folk. I was like, this sounds cool. And my friend was like, hey, I have tickets because his wife is Trinidadian. So I went, and it was amazing. He was, I guess we would say West Indian. He had Indian roots, but was in Trinidad. And he was killing it on the steel pan in a jazz format. And I was like, wow. And then they had a raffle at the end. And they were like, we're going to pull these tickets so we can give away some things. So one was some classes, some were some gifts. So the first person they pulled was me. And I won, an opportunity to take a course for free. So I took a music 101 class. And through that class, I learned that music was math. And I've been into math and sciences for a very long time. So it led me down the rabbit hole of grasping it really fast, but also understanding the language behind it, because it is its own language, but it's a language that communicates with a universal language. So my teacher, I let her hear my music, and she's like, wow. And she began to explain why certain chords and things gave certain effects and etc. So then later on, when I began to get into meditation and Qigong, I wanted to make music for my Qigong practice for every organ, because the music that I was listening to was beautiful, but it was kind of the same music, just with different energy organ sounds. And I wanted to kind of customize and amplify my experience. So I began to create that music for the liver, the stomach, spleen, and etc. And I noticed a great effect. So I tested that for about 2 to 3 years. And then that's when I started making music and giving sessions for other people. And long story short, there we go.
So for anyone who may not be familiar with Qigong, what exactly is that, and what does that have to do with the organs of the body?
Okay, so Qigong is the mother, how I explain it to everyone, it's the mother of Kung Fu, because everyone heard of Kung Fu with Kung Fu Panda and things like that, and Bruce Lee. So that's always a great start, right? So it has 4 pillars. So it has a martial form of it, which is the Kung Fu. It has a spiritual, it has a scholar, and it has a medical form of it. So the medical form of Qigong is what I practice. I practice majority of the time 3 of them. I'm getting more into the martial form later on in the practice, but it is a part of what is called traditional Chinese medicine. I usually say, for those who don't know what that is, more and more people are beginning to know about acupuncture. So acupuncture follows this traditional Chinese medicine theory. And in this theory, there's a 5-element system. So each element is associated with an organ. So when we talk about elements, talking about earth, wind, fire, wood, and metal. So when we're talking about these elements, we're associating them with different seasons, with different foods, with different temperaments, and different emotions, and different types of energies and colors and things like that. So what Qigong does is it links all of these things together. It's similar to Tai Chi. So a lot of people have heard of Tai Chi, but a little bit different in respect that it has a whole bunch of different intricacies that you're focusing on versus just the movement and the breath. You're actually doing postures for the different organ systems, which are associated with different meridians and things that run through the body. And how I explain that, just imagine you have a house and you have plumbing in your house, and there is a clog on the top floor that's stopping it from going down into the sewer. So that would be a blockage, in which we call stagnation. You can either get rid of that with acupuncture, which is taking a needle, and imagine a needle would be like taking a rodder and going in the area that the clog is and rotting it out, and then it allows the water to flow. The water is the blood and the qi, which is referred to in Qigong. Qi, sorry, this was the first thing I should have said. Qi means energy. Gong, yes, I know.
I'm like, this is Shannon Harris, and today he is our walking encyclopedia.
So qi means energy. I should have said that at the beginning. So gong means cultivation. So it's the cultivation energy. So it's like taking a rodder and sticking it in and riding out the pipe so the energy can flow. So like water flows, so blood and chi, energy flows through the body. So Qigong is about the cultivation of energy through the body, and you can use it to heal different organs. And it's actually self-diagnosing because when you have imbalances in the organs, they show up as different type of emotions out in there.
And you mentioned a moment ago that when you were exploring the combination between the Qigong principles, the organs, healing practices, and the various sound frequencies and vibrations in music, you mentioned that you were testing the effects of these different frequencies on different organs. What on earth does that mean? How do you test something like that?
See, with Qigong, it's very practical and hands-on. So first, through the meditative practice, you become very honest and objective with yourself, because that's a huge thing. So when you begin to practice Qigong, you begin to become more bodily aware. So say, for instance, if I'm always nervous, and you would begin to think like, why am I always nervous? I'm always worrying about something and my stomach's always bothering me and I feel these butterflies in my stomach. So I would have a lot of worry and then some fear and sometimes anger. So that feeling in my stomach as I'm testing the Qigong postures and the sounds would actually alleviate it or suppress it over a long period of time until I keep doing it to be alleviated. And over time, I won't get triggered from those same things anymore. So with doing the kidney for fear, I've overcome like fear of heights. I used to be scared to climb up a ladder to clean gutters or something. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So that's a gauge for it. And then we also have what's called my naturopath used to have what's called a EMI, and then the more modern version is a DMI. So a digital meridian imaging and electronic meridian imaging.
Yeah.
So what that does is you hold one pole, it's like a metal rod, and then you take another, it looks like a pin, and you push it on what's called the gene well. So the tips of the fingers and the tips of the toes, those are the well points where the energy deposits. So that's why it's called a well. So it holds that energy. And he would test over time via the diet and my Qigong practices and things, if the kidney would come from, if say, for instance, if the kidney was low, kidney chi was low, he would test over time and it would rise up and balance itself out. So with that music that I was creating and that Qigong practice, I saw over time, and it happened faster when I started doing that. My tests began to balance quickly and had more harmony within my body.
Well, what I've observed from many years of practicing yoga, meditation, chanting mantras, getting acupuncture, working with essential oils, like all the healing practices, right? Reiki, attunement. There's so much information that our bodies are constantly communicating to us. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, a societal thing, why this is, but I feel that we generally don't learn how to listen to what the body is telling us. Like we've been very sort of dissociated from the messages that our body has. And in our culture, in the US, Western culture, it sort of is almost like if the body is giving you a message and you have discomfort, or it doesn't feel good, or it's inconvenient to you, then the best thing to do is to try to suppress it and get rid of that feeling as quickly as possible, or to overcome it in some way rather than exploring, why am I having this discomfort? What is this message that the body is giving me? I've even, through studying body work, therapeutic body work, trigger points, myofascial pain, things like that, when you have pain, is it that you need to get rid of the pain, or is it that you need to find the root of why that pain is happening and what it's communicating to you? Like, is the pain actually like a messenger or like a useful thing that can help you in some way? And we just typically, unless we're seeking out some kind of healing practices or healing work, we're not taught, we don't learn how to actually have these conversations with our body.
Yeah, well said. That's what I learned. My greatest body awareness practice it came through Qigong, when they would explain that the nervous system, the lymphatic system, the different organ systems actually had kind of a sensory. So when an alarm go off, that's how they would explain it.
Yeah.
You know, anger is not, as humans, we experience anger. Yeah. But it means something.
Right.
It's something that's causing it. Like if you're living in anger all the time, you actually, in the traditional Chinese medicine practice, it's stated that you have an imbalanced liver. So what I like about Qigong too, like you said, the part of becoming more bodily aware is awesome, even with yoga and these different systems. And there was another component of it, how you begin to look at society. So I remember when we were learning it, they were like, well, a lot of people would experience some people and they'd be like, oh, that person is like an a-hole. They're always acting like an a-hole, like for example. So they were like, in the Qigong practice, that anger or whatever they're doing is an imbalance in their system. So you look at them different. You don't look at them like this person's an a-hole and just try to like judge them based upon the way they're acting. They actually have something actually imbalanced really going on in their body. And now the culture is beginning, as we get more into yogic and Eastern type of practices, we're beginning to see a lot of these things we live with that are mental illnesses aren't normal. Mm-hmm. So it's like you said, in this culture, we are walking around muscling through a whole bunch of things with a cognitive dissonance to them. And we try to defend, them via identifying with them as a part of our self-identity. And it really has nothing to do with who we really are. And that will go deep into like a spiritual practice of, the knowledge of self and knowing thyself and things like that. And so I won't go there right now.
And this is now a 5-hour podcast episode. So I was listening to currently in your Instagram account, you have it linked to your SoundCloud. And in your SoundCloud, you have something that is called, I have to look at the word. So it's Afrofruitrinity. Is that how you say that?
You did really well. So Afri, just think of Afri, Futrinity. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Tell me what that is and tell me how you describe what you're doing musically right now.
What's really awesome is over time, I'm actually beginning to connect the dots to all these different types of talents I have. And in a way where it's not so subliminal. So what I'm trying to say is, as a DJ, I've always been playing like conscious music. And as a producer, a composer, I've always been producing conscious music. But sometimes it goes unnoticed, because it's subliminally, and then the music is placed in certain environments that are not for these practices that we're talking about.
When you say conscious music, how would you describe what is conscious music?
Well, for me, conscious music is actually music that is functional. So I'm actually making music that is aligned with like different types of functional frequencies. And when I'm playing music, it has that in it. It's not just, oh, this sounds good, feels good. No, I'm actually sitting there trying to say, well, what is this doing here? And what is this doing? Let me put these together and let me figure out a way that I can play this to people to actually create a healing response. And how I test it is on me. So the purity of the music I create has to be a resonance inside of me first. So I use it on me first. So if I'm angry, but I'm making a song about love, then the music is not even for me. It's not doing its job.
Okay.
With Afrofruitrinity, what I created was, it has different components. So it's an audio book, an Afri-sci-fi audio book. But then what we're doing is the sci-fi, people look at science fiction as fictional.
Right.
So I have a thing that I coined called Afri-sci facts. So with the facts that are science, we're exposing a lot of inventors and things that are from the African diaspora that are unheard of. So they have these books like 101 Inventors or some of these people who are behind the scenes. There's so many things that are not taught in schools and that are by people of color or women that are not talked about. You know, when they came out with the Hidden Colors movie, I don't know if you've seen that, with the Black women in NASA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't have been able to even travel out into space. So, you know, exposing those type of facts. So we have a factual thing that I'm creating about exposing these rare type of historical data or facts or contributions to society. And these are things that we use every day that we don't have a clue, like the iron board, the broom, the combustion engine, which is in everything, you know, that we use as far as transportation and things like that. So we have that. Then as the DJ component, because people look at DJ as like turn up party type of thing or dance. So I'm playing rare music that you won't hear. It's not pop music. And that music is also picked and selected based upon the frequencies or the moods it's going to instill via each episode. So we're writing narrations. We created avatars. So we're introducing the nature of avatars, and we're talking about very spiritual, divine things, but it's in a kind of a way where it has music to go with it. And it causes you to use the imagination in following us on this journey to the planet, to different spaces. And then as we are exploring the planet and different creations, we're exploring these different types of, I don't want to say history or her story or mystery, my story. So we're exploring all of that inside of this paradigm. And then on the back end of that, there is a curriculum coming out that's going to talk about this history and things like that. So teachers, because my partner is a teacher. So we're writing a curriculum where we can have this as something we can teach children and adults about these type of things. So, yeah.
And who is this a collaboration with?
With Stacey Gibson.
Stacey Gibson. Okay. That's really amazing because I think this is a little bit down a rabbit hole, but with education, I mean, as you know, I work with high school students in Chicago in a Chicago public school, and we work on podcasting, but it has become more and more obvious to me now working in an education, in a public education system. And I think just with everything going on in 2020 right now, how much is coming to light that we quote unquote learned in school, that we took it for granted because we learned it in school and it was part of a class called history. And so you don't think of the fact that history is written from a perspective, right? Like from a particular perspective, that it is not an objective truth of the situation, and that it's leaving out, you know, I think that I'm a fairly intelligent human being, and yet there are things that I am learning specifically this year that is like, wait, what? What happened? Why don't I know these things about, you know, obviously I'm a white person, but I live in the United States. And so even within that, like anything that has happened in the United States or leading up to the creation of the United States is part of my history. And there's like these whole things that I didn't know. Why did I not know that? Why do we not know these things? Why are these things hidden? Why are these things suppressed? And then learning the power structures behind why those things are hidden, why those things are suppressed. And then the flip side of that is like, okay, cool. So now you know that. But then from an education perspective, how do you change that? How do you fix that? How do you provide students with a more complete or from multiple perspectives historical context? You know, how do you change? I mean, changing curriculum within a system is like...
Trust me,
it is a very tall order, especially when you have certain administrations in place. And so I think it's really interesting, like looking at not only what is being taught, but how people learn and how the ways in which we have administered school and the ways in which we have given education don't work for all students. Like it doesn't support all learning styles. And what you're creating feels like a very multi-learning style, multi-layered way of approaching education in a new way.
Yeah. And in an alternative way, because I know a lot of teachers and I've taught in schools too. I've taught Qigong and meditation, like mindfulness classes, and science and sound. And like you said, the notion of instilling a new curriculum in a system that they have their own syllabus or syllabi. So that's why I created another platform of my own. And it's going to roll out and become available. The curriculums are going to be available for teachers who want to teach alternative learning. And with the COVID scenario, there's a lot of online schooling. And in fact, the teachers are having issues connecting with the students because it's a new technology type of thing. And I feel that creative things like this is how to get their attention, bridging in the technology and then switching it, not just doing the same thing with new technology. I feel that the evolution of the majority of humanity hasn't evolved as fast as the technology. For example, we wrote on stones. We took the same thing we wrote on stones and cut down trees and put it on paper. We took the same thing we wrote on stones and in paper and we put it in a computer. And then we're going to do that, whatever it's going to turn out to be. What about the information? You know, what about how we engage with it? In a lesson, how do we engage with people? It really doesn't have to be in just reading something. The visual component can be VR in how we teach and things like that, and AR. So I'm also on the side of Afri Trinity. I'm working on some immersive experiences as well with some other partners and releasing this whole thing of how to take this technology and bring these alternatives to this world, stretching it a little bit where we can allow people to use their imaginations through this educational process.
How do you think travel and learning about different cultures and immersing yourself in different cultures has influenced the work that you're doing?
To be honest, that is the biggest influence for me in every endeavor I've embarked in. So my biggest, I guess I want to say, inspiration and elevation in, you know, my craft or talents or my abilities came when I started this organization, the Assist Society. It was a 501c3 non-for-profit. And Assist is an acronym that stands for Aiding in Sustainable Solutions International Support Team. And our motto was providing sustainable solutions towards community evolution. Now, when I got into it, what happened was, I'm going to give you the scenario. Now, as I was doing my Qigong practice and, you know, I had got a gig to play in Switzerland. I played in Switzerland and something like shifted as I was playing. That night I was playing some of the stuff that I'm playing in the Afri Trinity that I never got a chance to play anywhere else. It's like space and, you know, very explorative. But anyway, I had a vision. I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to go to Brazil and do some spiritual work out there, blah, blah, blah. So I came back from Switzerland and I was like, you know what? It's time to go to Brazil. And people were inviting me to Brazil and Argentina to play music. And I was just like, nope, I want to go into the mountains. I want to do like some spiritual rituals, ceremonies, and learn about the culture. So I had a friend that I would talk back and forth online. I went out there and stayed with their family for, I believe, a month or a little bit over a month. And I had another epiphany while I was laying down and was like, and let me back up a little bit. When I was out there, I started teaching Qigong in the mountains and where there had creeks and things like that. And, you know, was just inspired by the land and nature. And then we were going to a lot of different types of ceremonies, Santeria, Candomblé, and etc. So one morning I woke up and was like, I need to instill some of these lessons or things and I want to embark on kind of a mentorship with some elders and things like that. Because I noticed when I first started traveling to Japan, well, that was like my first overseas experience. After I played, I would just go to the country and just hang out at shrines for no reason. So that was a common thing I would do. And it took me probably almost 7-8 years to say, oh, you know what? That's a common thing I do. What is up with that?
So in the moment, you didn't even know that why you were doing it, or?
No. We would be in the city and I would do the gigs. And then right after the gig, I have a record label. So I would sell the records at the store a couple of days and I say, I need to go into the country and go to the shrines. And everywhere I would go, that would be the thing I do. I use my travel to go learn the culture in the spiritual context. And I would do prayers and meditations in those locations and spend majority of my time there. And then back to the airport and then off to somewhere else, the same thing and same thing and same thing. So fast forwarding, because the Sis Society wasn't an idea then. That began to come when I was in Brazil. I didn't have a name for it in Brazil because I saw a documentary about the biggest garbage slum, in Brazil with people, they eat there, they live there. So I wanted to go do something there to help them. So when I had that epiphany, it was like, you need to be doing something in Africa. And I had some pen pals in Africa and some musicians that I was working with. So I went to Kenya, and that's when the Sis Society started its headquarters there. And outside of there, before I went there, I did a project with planting some trees in Costa Rica.
Was this all one trip, or was this many small trips that happened sort of sequentially?
Many small trips that happened sequentially. And it was all paid by me. And I had a full-time job. I had like 8 different things going on. So my career was in IT. So at that time, I was working at AT&T. But I've worked at like IBM and SBC and things like that. So I had a 9-to-5, and what I would do is take extended leaves and go do these pilgrimages. So during that time in Kenya, I went there, and that's when the name came to me before I went during winter solstice. And I went, and I had no idea what I was about to receive from going into the bush and living with the Maasai and the Samburu people. But I learned so much about deforestation, environmentalism, ecology, global health crisis that I was in over there, different things like droughts, tribal and cultural dynamics. Trade was a huge thing that I participated in, doing a lot of fair trade versus free trade. I became a videographer because I had to shoot documentaries, a documentarian. I began to build alternative energy systems for the people over there. Then I began to even learn about NGO and non-for-profit or not-for-profit sectors, nonprofit sectors, and then different types of spirituality concepts and designing sustainable community models. And that was a whole bunch to do as a solo guy. So I had a team, but they wouldn't travel with me, and I had to go there and meet with a lot of people and, mobilize a lot of these things in a short amount of time. And it actually happened. And when I was doing that, a year later came the audio pharmacology. It got named through winter solstice. I was already doing the practice. I just asked, okay, what do I call this? And while I was over there, I wanted to bring some of the tools and things to the people. So I began to create mobile triage designs to the audio pharmacology protocol. And then I began to research how to use technology in the bush that doesn't need, electrical grids to do eye tests. Those are things I was doing. I got like these small machines that do, vitamin and mineral tests and things without blood. I taught many classes out there with my students, and I would use technology because they've never seen like the solar system. So I had this cool app on my iPad, and we went out in the bush. And actually, that was the first time I can see the Milky Way. I thought the Milky Way was a thing you can only see through telescopes. So I was like, whoa, is this real? And they're looking at me laughing. They're like, what's wrong with this guy? We see this all the time. I'm laughing I'm like, is this real? Look at this. And I'm so excited. I was like, wow, I've been trying to see this. And then just laughing. So
Did you grow up in Chicago?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you're a city kid who just finds yourself in the like most incredible natural environments in these different countries.
Yeah, I love the bush. I'm uncomfortable with the city. I grew up in the city, but I just love nature. When I'm in a bush, even in India or wherever I go, I don't really do the cities. I don't stay there long. I go right to the bush. And it's interesting because when I was younger, I didn't have a family where we would go like to the forests and things like that all the time. I was a Boy Scout and I really loved that, the camping and things like that. So that was an influence on, learning about nature and things like that. But through that trip, I also learned alternative therapies based upon the herbs that were in their environment that they use for remedies. So there's tons of plants that are still undocumented that they're using for different type of ailments. And then I was able to share too, because I came over there with all these like supplements and things, and they were looking like, this guy's taking a whole bunch of drugs every day because they're in pills, right? And I stayed with doctors. Like I worked in the clinic. I stayed with the clinic, the doctors. So they were like, this guy's taking all these drugs every day. And they would invite other doctors and they're looking. And it was funny too, because I was doing Qigong in the morning and the children be going to school and they'd be walking and I'm doing the sounds, and they're walking and they're like, this dude's weird. And you can hear them like laughing and pointing. So anyway, one doctor came and asked me, yeah, we understand that you have like a pill for everything. And I was like, no, not for everything. It's like, so what is this big thing? Those cases that have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I had a huge one that can last almost like a month, of pills. But these were supplements.
Yeah.
So I had to explain to them. I said, oh, no. These are not drugs. These are supplements. These are the herbs like you have just grind up and put in these capsules. And they were like, huh? Why would they do that? Why can't they just, I said, well, I can't get into it, but this is how it's distributed overseas and where I come from. And it was interesting because they would come with different ailments and I would start giving them supplements and they would see how fast it would help. So the community started calling me a doctor because I was doing that. And I was like, oh, no, well, no. So then next year I would come and stay a long period of time. I had to bring extra supplements, extra teas and all these different things. And it would always be somebody coming, hey, you got some of that tea that you gave me like last week and things like that.
Well, and I'm curious because one of the themes that or the threads that goes through this show and some of the different conversations that I have in the name, the creative imposter, also has to do with the way we think about identity as being defined by like the creative things that we do. And this feeling sometimes that comes up that somebody will say, oh, you are a doctor, or you have a pill for everything, or you know all these things and you're magical. You're this weird guy, magical guy with a pill for everything, making these sounds, walking through the bush. You've got this little machine, whatever it is. And truthfully, you're this kid from Chicago who grew up in the city who's gone on this quest and taken it upon yourself to learn all of these different things. But was there ever a time through you like single-handedly learning all of these different pieces, all of these different practices, all these different technologies, the art, the science, the spirituality of things, that you ever felt like an imposter or you ever felt like a sense of self-doubt about what you were creating or offering or doing?
My last pilgrimage was to India. I went there without cameras because I didn't want to I said, you know what? I'm not going to do the documenting thing. I'm not going to do the healing thing. I'm just going to be there taking it all in. So I had the opportunity to travel there with a Maharaj one-on-one. And he took me to all the holy dhams and we did chanting and all of these different things. And the last place that we settled down, which is near Calcutta, which is called Navadip. I was there in one of the compounds that this big Maharaj owns. And it was, I think it was 2 days after this huge festival. Everyone came around the world for this big festival and they were all staying there. And I got there, it was kind of the residue of the last people who didn't leave yet. So, and I know residue is a weird name to describe it.
And I'm like, is this physical residue or energetic residue or both?
Both, yeah. The energy was the residue there, and then it was just little sprinkles of people, that was still around. They had a whole bunch of food that was still there. Actually, I've never seen anything like that. So it was like, imagine a building that's a block long. And I'm going to describe it in a American context. Okay. And it has kind of a ground level covered parking thing with pillars. Now imagine there's potatoes that fills up that whole thing. And then you have a couple of people in there with the little buckets, peeling. I'm just like, you all have a long way to go.
Oh, man. Just peeling by hand.
So when I was there, I don't know how the word got around because I was doing oracle readings and doing meditation with my other friends. When I got the only time I got a chance to kind of leave from the Maharaj is kind of in the middle part of my trip. And I hung out with my friends there. And I still came with like, okay, let's meditate and let's, do readings. And we were just having these deep dialogues. So when I got to Navadip, I was just there taking it in. But then other Maharajas were knocking on my door. Hey, Shannon, how's it going? Hey, great morning. Hare Krishna. And they were trying to soak up some of the information and dialogue with me. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm teaching Maharajas Qigong on the roof. And then I begin to teach some of the practitioners Qigong on the lawn. And then they were like, well, we do work at this school. Why don't you go to this school and just check it out? And I went there and, I'm in the country of like yoga. So, so I'm like, okay, so Qigong it's not popular there, but yoga is. It's kind of, to me, it's similar. Qigong comes from that yogic tradition. So when I got to the school and I hung out with people and then I just out of nowhere, it's like, hey, you want to teach us some of this thing we hear that you do over in the compound over there? And I was just like, oh, okay. And it was all these children who speak Bengali. And some of them have some English. Some of them they were refugees. So I began to teach in dual language because I had an interpreter and things like that. And it turned out to be one of the most amazing experiences. But at one point I did have that like, well, I'm not supposed to be teaching them Qigong because they do yoga, type of thing.
Yeah.
But it blew their mind. So this is what was interesting is the children came on the weekends to take my class and after school. Because I think when I was there, I had 2 more weeks left. So they were like, we want to come on, on our off days to take these classes. So we were learning meditation, some yoga, some Qigong. They would play some kirtan for me. And it was an amazing thing. But yeah, there was a time when I was teaching there, I was like, I wasn't expecting to be teaching in India. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it was wild to me. I was like, whoa, it's a dream come true. It was fascinating, but it was also surreal. It was like, I'm here teaching. I wasn't planning to be teaching Maharajas and children. And I'll wrap it up with this. I ended up teaching those children for months after I came back online via like video chat. And it was funny because, you've been in India, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times. Yeah. So you know how they like closed spaces?
Yes.
So it's like, 60 to 100 children on this small rooftop.
Packed in there, yeah.
And they're looking at me through a phone and they're getting it. I'm like, how are they doing that? How are you going to look at these moves through a phone? The whole class. Imagine like 60 people.
Wow.
So it was interesting.
I have one last question for you, but before I give you that question, if someone wants to hear some of the Afri-Trinity,
Yes.
or if they want to learn more about audio pharmacology and how to connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
You can go to my website, which is www.audiopharmacology, pharmacology.com. And on the first page, if you scroll down, you'll see links to it and flyers and things like that. And you can also go to Instagram, which is a great page to even see some of these experiences in Kenya and Belize and all these different travels. It's at Audio Pharmacology on Instagram. And if you type in Audio Pharmacology on Facebook, I have a business page and a group page. So those are like some great ways.
All right. So if someone is feeling that these current times, everything that we are experiencing so far in 2020 that has gotten amplified from the pandemic to the conversations about anti-racism and racism to the violence that has gotten more attention, I'm not sure if there's more happening right now or if it's just that it's getting more media attention right now and it's just something that has always been there. Mm-hmm. Everything that's happening, I know that some of us are feeling a lot more fragile. We're feeling a lot more sensitive. We're experiencing what I've heard in my community or have experienced personally, extreme fatigue out of nowhere or anxiety that we never had before or things triggering us or setting us off in unexpected ways. I think a lot of us are feeling things differently or more intensely than we have been in the past. What advice do you have for someone in terms of becoming, I think that you said more body aware, more aware of these emotional, physical states? Where does someone begin to explore that and learn a little bit more about what their body is communicating to them through their emotions?
So I speak from personal experience. So I'm not going to give a theory. I'm going to give what kind of worked for me. So what I noticed is when I was doing a lot of things, remember I said I was doing like 8 different jobs and things. My concept of time was, time equals money. I don't have enough time. You're wasting my time. I don't have time for that. I had to redefine what time meant for me. So I changed time into time is energy. It's not just a Monday, a Tuesday, or Wednesday. You'll often see me post online, it's Moon Day, Sunday, Mars Day. And those have characteristics, right? They have different energies if you get into astronomy. So for me, when I am fatigued, how much time am I dedicating myself to some type of narrative that is causing me to either overthink, overstress, over-emote, or overwork? And then I begin to look at things to manage that time better. So I actually, in 2015, left IT and began to strategize a life that is, as much as I'm on, I'm off. So I do suggest that. When we talk about meditation and Qigong, and I would talk to clients and he'd say, well, can you just take 15 minutes a day to breathe? I don't have time. But it's 24 hours in a day. You can't take 15 minutes to breathe. Mm-hmm. And we're into that narrative because when we think of time, we're always running against it. We're like, I got to fit it into something. So sit back and begin to use this concept of, I need more energy. Not, I don't have time. I just need more energy. How do I get more energy? So you might need to go to bed earlier. You might need to eat the right foods. You might need to do less overthinking something. That was a huge thing for me. I would get fatigued overthinking something. I can just sit here and you all like, why are you tired? Because I'm overthinking. So I would say that restructuring our management of time and start to implement things are more functional with our energy, because emotions are energy. Fatigue is the lack of energy, so look at life as there's abundance of energy and you have to learn how to manage it. Don't look at life as you're running against time and time is money and things like that. No, life there's abundance of energy. There's neither created nor destroyed. How do you manage it? How do you tap into that?
Shannon, is there anything else that you want to share with our Creative Imposter listeners before we say goodbye?
I would like to say thank you for having me on. And thank you we did a project some years back that you brought me in on. I really appreciate that. And I love your work that you do. I've been following you. Your meetups and things. I know what you're doing out there. So I love your energy, love what you're doing, and keep it up. And thanks for having me, and be safe out there.
There's an abundance of energy that is neither created nor destroyed. How do you manage that? How do you tap into that? I think if you can answer those questions, you've uncovered the meaning of life. So much gratitude to Shannon Harris for sharing his time, energy, curiosity, and of course his music. All of the music in this episode, other than our recurring theme music, was written and produced by Shannon. Please go check out his SoundCloud, linked of course in the show notes for this episode at thecreativeimposter.com/119, which you can easily navigate to from the episode description in the app you are using to hear my voice now. You'll also find the link to connect with the Creative Imposter Collective on Mighty Networks and the new Podcast Envy Pro Pod curated community of podcasters who are ready to grow their shows together. I'm Andrea Klunder. Thank you to Edwin Ruiz for mixing this episode, to Jovia Armstrong for our theme music, Maddie Shuchuk for editing this episode, Lisa Witter for the show notes, and to you for listening. It truly takes each of us to make this show happen. And if you love what you hear, I'd love to hear from you at ratethispodcast.com/creative. Take a screenshot of your review and email me or DM me on Instagram and let me know. This week, I'm encouraging you to get curious. Pay attention to the sounds in your environment, to what you're listening to, even this podcast and my voice right now, and see how you feel. What does it bring up? And how can you be more intentional about the sounds and the vibrations that you surround yourself with to become the best version of you?